Now, still on matters to do with the IMF, the fund is warning that the Nigerian economy will probably shrink this year as it's performing well below earlier forecasts. Now, the fund says energy shortages and delayed budget passage, both combined, will limit output in Africa's largest economy. Having contracted by 0.4% in the first quarter of the year, some economists, in fact, expect the economy to grow in the second half, but not at levels sufficient to recover the ground lost to the shrinkage seen in the first quarter and that expected in the second. Inflation, which is currently at 15.6%, may surge a little in the months to come. The World Bank lowered its forecast for Nigeria's growth to 0.8% last month, citing weakness from oil output disruptions and low prices. Let's dig deep into the issues in Africa's largest economy. Joe Femi Danguro is a development economist. He joins me now live from Lagos. Thank you very much for your time this evening, sir. Inflation data, that's coming out in the next 4 days. What do you expect to see? We've seen a very steep rise from under 10% in January to over 15% by end May. Do you expect that trend to continue?
Well, basically, you understand the fact that this we have to continue. There will be a contraction in it, and one is not expecting a surge that will really give most of us the kind of expectations that we have. But despite that fact, I think when you look back, you will be able to say that the government is doing a lot, and they have put in a lot of things in place, a lot of measures and the framework and the time frame. And one expects that even if there's a contraction, it won't be as bad as one would have expected because of a lot of all these situations that have been put under control. You see the foreign exchange is a new dimension in the foreign exchange procedure, and a couple of other things are coming up that one will expect that though there will be a contraction, but it won't be that much.
Well, yes, there is a contraction that we're expecting in the second quarter, but with respect to inflation, given the fact that we floated the Naira on the 20th of June, do you expect inflation to surge?
Oh, sure. Inflation, you should look at it. The basic definition of inflation is rising cost of goods and services, which we have. You know, rising cost, a rapid rising cost in imported raw materials. Energy cost is is rising, and the production and transportation of goods. So definitely, there would be a huge rise in inflation in Nigeria. No doubt about that, because right now you have people not being able to meet they're not being able to meet their expectations. And at the end of the day, the state governments have not been able to pay some people, their staffs or their workers generally. Some have not been able to pay for the past 8 months or 6 months. And they have to go into the market. They have to go borrowing from the federal government. So a lot of issues. And these will drive the inflation so high. I mean, it's expected anyway.
Indeed. Related to that, given all the factors that you've mentioned, unemployment, of course, has risen. There's quite a bit of debt floating around. Non-performing loans are going up. The traditional response to rising inflation would be to raise rates in order to try and tame that. But is that something you expect the Central Bank of Nigeria to do?
Well, I think, you see, it's a cloudy weather. Sometimes you can't really understand. You don't know what steps. And most analysts have predicted so many areas and so many issues and so many suggestions have been made that have not been followed. So you will realize that the manufacturing sector is crumbling. And people are being laid out severally, and even in the banking sector. So the manufacturing sector is crumbling. Right now you have even the customs now saying, look, the Nigerian importers have to pay their duties pegged with a 282 Naira to $1, which has not been planned. I mean, the most important thing is that, people have to know, in Nigeria today, you can't plan ahead to say, this is what I'm going to import and this is the margin. Because you wake up tomorrow, there will be a new policy. And this is confusing the market. This is confusing the manufacturer. This is confusing the whole people, the whole investors as well. So you have to begin to see that unless we begin to plan ahead and we begin to make the market understand that these measures have to be announced ahead. It is not just to wake up within 24 hours and you discover that there's a change in policy. So this lack of consistency in our policy is causing a lot of confusion. Definitely, if the manufacturing sector we continue to struggle to exist because they cannot even produce produce as much as what we expect. So, and if importation, which is largely what we have to depend on, has to continue, then there's trouble looming somewhere. And don't forget that Nigeria today, as has been speculated in some other places, that we are no longer the largest oil producer. So a lot of things are happening unless we have a consistent policy and a framework that we enable the manufacturer, that we enable the citizens be able to have patience, and at the end of the day, have confidence in the government.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for your insights. We've been speaking to Joe Femi Dangoro. He's a development economist. He's been live, of course, in Lagos.